I think you've been reading a lot about, it's a terrible topic when you talk about financial after this, but we have a big country and we've been doing very well. The tariffs, as you know, are starting to come in at record levels. Tremendous amounts of money are coming in to our country. We never did that before. We're not used to it. We only have tariffs going out. We only adhere to the rules of other nations who charge us tremendous tariffs because we were led by stupid people or people without any business sense. And I'd like to ask Scott, you could maybe talk a little bit about how well we're doing with regard to the money coming in. And the big money will start coming in on August 1st. I think it was made clear today by the letters that were sent out yesterday and today. Go ahead, please.
Yes, sir. We will have taken in about $100 billion in tariff income thus far this year, and that's with the tariff, the major tariff not having started till the second quarter. So we could expect that that could be well over $300 billion by the end of the year. We don't agree with CBO scoring, but for those who do, the CBO scored tariff income over the next 10 years at $2.8 trillion, which we think is probably low. And you know, sir, under your leadership, we're witnessing.
And they gave us no credit during this last little, the great big beautiful bill.
The president is taking questions from reporters during his cabinet meeting. Let's listen.
Yeah, I'm looking at it.
Can you sign that?
It's an optional bill. It's totally at my option. They passed it totally at my option and to terminate totally at my option. And I'm looking at it very strongly.
Yesterday you said you want to see more.
Go ahead, please.
The Council of Economic Advisors released a new report saying that imported goods have actually decreased in price from December
I know, it's not
through
amazing.
March. Well, my question is,
With the tariffs.
Well, the Fed chairman keeps saying that tariffs are going to cause price increases.
Are we
the
talking
prices just not
Chairman
passed
of the
through?
Fed?
Yes, exactly.
Well,
Are the prices,
you do a better job than him.
are the prices just not passed through yet?
No, I think what's happening is everything's evening out. You know, when we charge, see what people don't understand, the other countries have been charged, almost every country charges us tariffs. We had deficits with everybody for years, for decades. And we were like this big monolith that made bad deals with everybody. We rebuilt South Korea, we stayed there. It's okay, we rebuilt it and we stayed there. And they pay us very little for the military. I got them to pay billions of dollars, and Biden then canceled it when he came in. You know, I said to South Korea, as an example, you know, we give you free military, essentially, very little. And I think you should pay us $10 billion a year. And they went crazy. But they agreed to 3. So I got 3 with a phone call. And I was satisfied. I said, but next year we have to talk. And then we had a rigged election, and we never got to talk. And you know what Biden did? They probably went to him and they said, listen, Trump treated us terribly and we shouldn't be paying anything, and he cut it down to nothing. So that's what happens. It's ridiculous. That's the other thing. We're talking to countries about contributing to the military, not only just paying more in NATO, but contributing. You know, we have 45,000 soldiers in South Korea. We have 45,000 soldiers in Germany, 52,000 actually. And you know, that's a huge economic development for them. That's tremendous amount. That's like having a city. It's tremendous money for them, and it's a tremendous loss for us. So we're talking, in a very nice way, we're talking to them about it. It's very unfair. We supply the militaries to many very successful countries. I mean, South Korea is making a lot of money, and they're very good. They're very good, but, you know, they should be paying for their own military.
President Trump, I'll ask you a question about Jerome Powell as well, and then a question to the Attorney
question
General.
about what?
Jerome Powell, and then I have a question for the Attorney General. Jerome Powell, who you've been pressuring to lower interest rates, he's facing accusations of lying to Congress, which is a potential crime about the opulent.
Well, then he should resign immediately. We should get somebody in there that's going to lower interest rates.
Do you want congressional
Why don't you
Republicans
go
to
for his resignation?
Do you want congressional Republicans to investigate and
It's
pursue
okay
and
with
punish?
me. I think he's terrible. I think, look, we're paying, I call him Too Late. T-O-O, Too Late, like Too Tall Jones for the Dallas Cowboys, right? Too late. He's always late. But he wasn't late with Biden before the election. He was cutting him like crazy. It didn't help too much, did it? But he was cutting him like crazy before the election with Kamala and Biden. He was trying to get them in, I guess. I don't know. He was recommended by somebody that worked for me. I like you better.
If I could ask the on the tariffs again, on August 1st, you've said is the deadline. What incentives do countries have to negotiate? It seems that deadline keeps moving. It was April 2nd, now it's...
We didn't move, no. It's always been August 1st, that's when we're paying. A statement was put out today, and I put it out just to make it clear. It wasn't a change, it was August 1st. We don't change very much, every time we put out a statement, they say he made a change. I didn't make a change. Clarification, maybe. No, August 1st they pay. And everybody pays, everybody has to pay, and the incentive is that they have the right to deal in the United States. If they don't want to, they don't have to pay, and they don't have to deal here. But if they want to buy and make a lot of money and sell in the United States, they have to do that. If you go back and look at some of the good presidents, our country was the wealthiest, proportionately the wealthiest. From 1870 to 1913, it was an all-tariff country. We didn't have income tax. That came in in 1913. We had tariffs. And we had so much money we didn't know what to do with it. We had, we had a couple of presidents that were very, very strong. McKinley, I guess more than anybody, but he was the tariff king, but he was very, very strong. It's sort of sad. He made a fortune for this country, became very rich, and then Teddy Roosevelt went out and vice president, and he spent the money. And they said Roosevelt was a great president. And let's say he was a great president, but the money was paid by McKinley with tariffs. Tariffs are charged by other countries at levels that are ridiculous. And I call those other countries to say, and every one of them is willing to give us everything now, by the way, just so you know. Sir, we'll charge you no tariffs, nothing. We'll give you everything. We'll give you access to our markets. We'll give you everything. Is that a correct statement, Scott?
Yes, sir.
Howard, would you say that's a correct statement?
Exactly correct.
It's like they just don't, because they're very spoiled, because for years they ripped us off and we didn't have a president that understood it, or Secretary of Treasury or Secretary of a lot of different secretaries are involved, but certainly Commerce Secretary was, not doing their job. I don't know about Kelly, she's small business. We'll keep it that way, okay? Her small business is bigger than almost all big businesses when you add it all up. But no, they are very respectful of our country. But the incentive is that they have the right to do business with us. Without that, they don't have the right to do business. And that would be okay too.
Will there be a flurry of deals? Will we hear in the next 24 hours? Will we hear a flurry of deals?
Yeah, we have a lot of them going out. But the deals are mostly my deal to them. We're picking a number that's low. We don't want to hurt them. And fair. We're picking a number that's lower than, in most cases, lower than what they charged us. But it's amazing when you've paid all this money for years and they get one president that's a little bit different and a little tougher on this subject, and they're willing to drop everything they've been charging us for years and years. I mean, we have countries going, we will have you don't have to pay any tariff to come in and do business. They're giving us total access to their countries. They gave us no access to the country. They'd say, well, you cannot go into our country. Okay, good. Now we will give you total access and you don't have to pay any tariffs. But please don't charge us tariffs. And we don't like that deal. So the letters I send out we have made some deals. We can make a lot more deals. It's just too time consuming. It just makes it more complicated. And we can do things over the years too. We're not hard line. But it's about time the United States of America started collecting money from countries that were ripping us off and laughing behind our back at how stupid we were. Okay? Thank you.
Mr. President,
on the tariff issue, so you've talked about India coming, but then a couple days ago you issued a new tariff threat to members of the BRICS countries for if they aligned with anti-American policies.
10% charge.
That would be India, Brazil,
That's
Russia,
right, they have to pay 10% if they're in BRICS. Because
Right.
BRICS was set up to hurt us. BRICS was set up to degenerate our dollar and take our dollar as the standard, take it off as the standard. And that's okay if they want to play that game, but I can play that game too. So anybody that's in BRICS is getting a 10% charge.
Is that immediate, sir, or is
Yeah,
that
pretty soon.
if they engage in some behavior?
Well, if they're a member of BRICS, they're going to have to pay 10% tariff. just for that one thing, and they won't be a member long. I thought BRICS was, I said this about a year ago, and it largely broke up. But, there are a couple that hang around, but I thought it largely broke up. BRICS is not, in my opinion, not a serious threat. But what they're trying to do is destroy the dollar so that another country can take over and be the standard. And we're not going to lose the standard at any time. If you have a smart president, you will never lose the standard. If you have a stupid president like the last one, you would lose the standard. You wouldn't have the dollar as you. And if we lost the world standard dollar, that would be like losing a war, a major world war. We would not be the same country any longer. We're not going to let that happen. The dollar, you ever hear the expression, dollar is king? The dollar is king. We're going to keep it that way, okay? And I'm just saying, if people want to challenge it, they can, but they're going to have to pay a big price. And I don't think any of them are willing to pay that price.
Does that jeopardize?
Thank you, Mr. President. Are you optimistic about reaching a tariff deal with the European Union soon?
Well, the European Union has been speaking to us, Ursula and the whole group, and they've been very nice. They treated us very badly until recently. Now they're treating us very nicely. It's like a different world, actually. They've treated us very badly. They were among the toughest to deal with. Actually, in many respects, they were much worse than China. Look at what they do to our companies. They sue Apple. They sue Google. $17 billion they got from Apple on a lawsuit that they didn't have a case. They have, judges that are European Union judges. And they ruled, they take so much money away from our country in terms of that, in terms of other things that they do. They're very tough. But now they're being very nice to us, and we'll see what happens. We're probably 2 days off from sending them a letter. We are talking to them. I just want you to know, a letter means a deal. A lot of people said, we got 200 countries. We can't meet with 200 countries. We have a few trusted people that know what they're doing, that are doing a good job, but you can't do it. You have to do it in a more general way, but it's a very good way. It's a better way. It's a more powerful way. And we sent them a letter. You read the letter. I think it was well crafted. And mostly it's just a little number in there. You'll pay 25%, 35%. We have some at 60, 70. Those are ones with massive, where we have massive trade deficits because they've treated us very badly. But I would say in every case, I'm treating them better than they treated us over the years. Don't you agree with that? I do. I could have done much. I could have been much harsher. I don't want to do that. We want to have relationships, but in every case, they treated us far worse than I'm treating them. I'm treating them very good. I could go higher with the tariffs, but I don't want to hurt them. That's why when you just read it, you come up with the number. It's so incredible that prices are actually going down. Just so you know, when I got in, everyone said, "Oh, eggs are going through the roof." That was I was in for about 4 days, and they started screaming at me about eggs. They said, "That's Biden's problem." I didn't know about eggs, but eggs went up about 5 times. You did a fantastic job, and we ended up shortly getting. In fact, for Easter, they said, "Go out and buy plastic eggs. You can't use real eggs." Well, we bought 200,000 eggs for the White House for the Easter egg hunt that we have at the White House, and there were eggs. We had the price down, and now the price is lower than it was before. We did a good job with eggs, but we did a good job with groceries. Our prices are down in this country. A big part of it's oil. The oil, you had a couple of places last week, you had $1.99 for oil, for gasoline. Nobody thought they'd see that. I want to get it lower if I can, but we've done a good job. You've done a very good job.
Can we talk about tariffs for a minute? One of the last things he said there, a letter means a deal. A deal is a deal. A deal is a negotiation. A letter, as I discussed with the Treasury Secretary on Sunday, is either a threat or it is a position. And clearly what the White House is doing and what the president himself has done has morphed from, I can make deals with anybody and I'm going to make 90 deals in 90 days with all of these countries, when he put the pause on the tariffs after Liberation Day, to nope, I'm just going to set the new tariff, and if you want to change that, then you have to negotiate directly with me.
Yeah, and there are negotiations going on with a lot of different countries in the European Union, as the president said. But sending a letter and saying this is what the tariff is, that's not a deal, right? That's just a one-sided thing. And I think, he can do that, but if he does that to the European Union, there's going to be a pushback. There will be counter tariffs, and we'll be right back where we were at the beginning of this in April. And so there's been this 90-day period. He said, I didn't extend the deadline. He actually signed an executive order yesterday so that the tariffs didn't go effect on July 9th. They go into effect on August 1st.
Right.
That's on the White House website. We all know he had to sign an executive order to move the deadline. So there's a lot of bluster here and defensiveness because he's promised something, the deals haven't materialized, now he's trying to impose. And look, the U.S. does have a lot of leverage. The EU, for one, may just say, we can live with a 10% tariff, let's just agree to this, let's give him something, let's not escalate this, and let's ride it out for 4 years. The president does have leverage with a lot of these countries.
Yeah.
But if you go way up on the number and you just say this is what it is, there's going to be a lot of counter tariffs and responses that will hit the economy.
And as I bring you in, Dave, I just want to put up on the screen where we are right now with some of these trading partners who were hit with new tariffs after or as the president started sending letters and as that pause lifted and as he's trying to kind of rejigger how he's approaching these countries.
Yes, it's a repeat, but with everyone's experience with the first Liberation Day, adjusting to the expectation that he prefers to declare some sort of victory and move off of this than to do something that hurts American consumers. That is, I think, generally how people are interpreting those actions, those negotiations. The White House likes to declare victory and move on. And when you saw it frankly, in the Jeffrey Epstein answer, he was exasperated by a question that very, very much helped him in his campaign in 2024, because in their view, they moved on. It's a new administration. Why is the media still asking this question? I expect we'll get some of the same response if this round of tariffs doesn't go very well.
We couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
We don't want to waste time on Jeffrey Epstein. It was conservative media that demanded these answers.
Well, and the base is still demanding those answers.
Right.
So he is still getting pushback, and it'll be interesting actually to see what unfolds after that answer, because it was, I think, the first time we heard from him after all of that. But back on to the tariffs, the goalposts keep changing. We have seen that time and again with the deadline, and you correct me if I'm wrong here, but now it's also the substance. For the substance of the deal to be the letter, which is very similar to what a Truth Social post would be, the way that he was written in very vintage President Donald Trump form. But the markets have appeared to sort of taken this approach of, we'll wait and see how this actually unfolds. But it does affect the consumers, the small businesses who are trying to navigate what's there. And the president essentially saying, this is it.
Yeah, until it's not.
We're also following the latest on President Trump's trade war. He's telling 14 countries that their tariff rate is about to go up, some by 40%. But he's once again extending the deadline for trade talks, now saying the so-called reciprocal tariffs will take effect August 1st instead of tomorrow, as originally planned. CNN anchor and chief domestic correspondent Phil Mattingly is here with me in the Situation Room. Phil, break down these new tariff rates and the challenges these countries are facing as the goalposts seem to be moving all the time.
That's the critical point when you ask about challenges right now, Wolf. When you talk to either officials or diplomats within these delegations that are engaged in really intensive bilateral trade negotiations and have been over the course of the last two and a half months, their biggest concern in this moment, besides the in-game outcome of a significant increase in their tariff rates across all of their exports to the United States, is they don't necessarily know what the president wants, what his team wants. They know he's very concerned about market access for U.S. products. They know that he's concerned about regulatory barriers, legislative barriers at various countries or the EU in general, but they don't know what combination will actually thread the needle for his top negotiators and eventually the president himself. When it comes to the rates that were laid out yesterday on those 14 letters, Wolf, what's most interesting is they don't really diverge that much from the April 2nd Liberation Day reciprocal rates that were delayed for 90 days. What they did see is another 3 weeks to negotiate. It's not tomorrow, as you noted, it's August 1st. The president saying just a short while ago, Wolf, as Kristen Holmes was reporting earlier in the show, there will be no extension. That means these 3 weeks, something has to get done across the board or major increases are coming.
The pressure is clearly on. What are the Trump administration's objectives here?
Again, I think what's difficult to kind of divine at this point in time is what combination of the various elements of negotiation will actually give the president what he wants, what he's looking for. Now, we do have two framework deals with the UK and kind of a more, I guess I would say, initial stage framework with Vietnam that are in place. There's also the truce with China that I think walked back the biggest, most market-rattling elements of the tariff policy. But when you talk to Trump administration officials, it cuts both ways here, Wolf, because what they make clear is they want the U.S. industry, U.S. products to have an easier time in these various markets from these various countries. But they also don't hate tariffs. The president likes tariffs quite a bit, and they certainly like the tariff revenue that's coming in over $80 billion, I think, at this point since January 20th, about 65% more than year over year from a year prior. So how they actually land this is the biggest question of all, Wolf, because at this point in time, 2 framework-ish deals and a truce is far short of 90 deals in 90 days, and certainly nowhere near an expansive kind of reorienting of the entire market for global commerce that the president was intending to go after when he initially launched this on April 2nd.